Okay. Here we go. All right. I think I'm live now. Welcome in, everybody. I hope that you're having a nice morning. Really excited to be doing a live stream today. As you are all coming in, I love to hear where people are coming from. Let's do like a little roll call. Where in the world are you located? Where are you tuning in from? Let's just put some of them up on the screen. Good morning from Nevada. Daphne. We've got Katerina from Sicily. Heidi from Oregon. I love it. Laura from Buffalo. Hey, Laura. Love your artwork. Check out Laura's artwork on Instagram. She's a great artist. Mallory from Grand Rapids. Hello. My mom lives in Grand Haven, not far from you. Let's see. Astro Stephanie from Greenville. Hey, Stephanie. Nightlight alumni. Ryan from Western Massachusetts. Hey, Ryan. And let's see. We've got San Diego. Oh my gosh, so many people. Nova Scotia, New York, Pennsylvania, Alabama. Wow, from Romania. Hello. All right, let's keep going. Katie from got someone from Minneapolis in the house. I love that. You got to have some Twin Cities folks. Emily's Witchcraft and Tarot from Devon, England. Hello, welcome in. Che from United Kingdom. Yeah, from upstate New York. This is great. I love seeing this. This is so cool. Another good morning from Minnesota. That makes my day. Let's see here. New Zealand. Oh my God. Norway. It's so cool. I'm always sort of blown away. I'm like, how do people, I guess YouTube, just find astrologers on YouTube? All right. Wow, there are so many. I can't keep up with them. Let's see here. Lotus Bloom from India. I'm just going to do a few more of these that are so cool. From Lebanon. And Dee Dee from Asheville. Hey, how are things in Asheville shaping up? I heard you guys don't have water yet. I heard that. I think I heard that recently. I'm like, you guys aren't supposed to get your water back for a little while yet. I hope everything's, yeah, I've been thinking about you guys. Asheville was, when I was on my book tour after the book I wrote about ayahuasca, I had a stop at a book. What was it called? Oh my God. Malaprops? I don't remember. It was a bookstore in downtown Asheville that I read my book at. And so I had a great time in Asheville visiting. Everyone was so cool. So thinking about you guys. Let's see. Oh my God. Nellie from California and from Belgium. So cool. I love this. This is just really neat. So here's what we're doing today. As people are streaming in, I just like to do a little roll call. It allows everybody to, kind of get into the live stream and kind of get situated before just diving into content. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with an open Q&A on any topics you'd like to ask me about in astrology, anything astrologically related. And then after a little bit of time doing some Q&A, I'm going to move into some live birth chart readings, and I will give you information about how you can submit your chart for a reading a little bit later. The people who are doing readings with me will actually come into the studio with me and enter into the live stream. So I will give you information on how you can submit your chart, and then obviously there's a lot of people that submit their charts, and I have to just pick a few. So there's no rhyme or reason. I just pick randomly, and I'll tell you more about how to do that shortly. So just kind of stay tuned for that, and we'll have some time to do some live birth chart readings. And the way I'm doing the readings today is really simple. I'm going to be looking at your birth chart and telling you what I think the most significant transit of the next year is within your birth chart. So it's a simple kind of one transit reading where I go, look, this is what I think the biggest transit is for your 2025. Now, I do these live streams during the Kickstarter every year because it's my way of saying thank you and giving something back to the community for supporting me, supporting my work and our staff and our programs. This is how I support myself and my family. So during Kickstarter season, I like to say thank you and come on, do these Q&As, do some live birth chart readings, and also kind of rally support for the Kickstarter as well. So I'm going to do some Q&A, and then I'm going to pause, and I'm going to tell you about the Kickstarter, and I'm going to tell you about the rewards that are in the Kickstarter so you can take a look at them. And then after that, I will return to Q&A for a little bit as people submit their information for birth charts, and then we'll go through maybe 3, 4, 5 birth chart readings. And what's nice about the readings is that I will make sure to break down the delineations in a way that is useful for people who are students of astrology. So this can be something that even if you're not getting your chart read will be useful insofar as I'll make sure that I'm telling you exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying and why the delineation is created in the way that it's created, so that it can be like a little craft session for students out there. And it doesn't have to feel like if you don't get your chart chosen, there's nothing to be here for, right? So we'll make sure that they're kind of like little classroom sessions as well as fun birth chart breakdowns. So that is the order of things that we are getting into. So on that note, if you have questions, we'll start with a little Q&A. What are your questions about astrology? Please don't ask anything that's like, what does this mean in my birth chart? Because I can tell you right now, I have no idea without looking at your entire chart. But if you have something very specific, like a planet in a house or an aspect between two planets or the dignity of a planet or any questions about astrology, more generally speaking, that you have as people who are learning about astrology, taking it in, I'd be glad to start with a little Q&A session, and then we'll see where we go from there. All right, let's see. And now, this is a good one. Renee asks, can you please say something about Neptune and Saturn in Aries, specifically as it applies to Aries rising? I recently heard a very popular astrologer call it a nightmare. Okay, well, I don't want to tell you, this astrologer should or shouldn't have said that, or because I have no idea what the context was. There might be a way in which Saturn and Neptune present on an archetypal level as the archetypal reality of a nightmare. And that wouldn't be totally off for Saturn Neptune, because sometimes if you think about the dream space as Neptunian, right? Just use Neptune to think about dreams. And then think about what interrupts the most blissful, think of Vishnu sleeping on the cosmic ocean, right? What interrupts Vishnu's blissful dreaming? I'm sure he doesn't get interrupted by nightmares, but what interrupts our yoga nidra, right? It's some kind of harsh or discordant imagery or themes or feelings or physiological responses that are happening that serve as a kind of crude disruption within the blissful flow state of dreams. Could that be read as Saturn Neptune? Absolutely. But that is one of at least 100 ways of thinking about the interaction of the archetypes. And so to call it a nightmare is vastly, overstated, or like it's just misleading. If the astrologer was saying that's what it is, definitively, that would be a misleading statement. But to say that Saturn Neptune could represent something like a nightmare archetypally is totally valid, as long as we understand that it's not a nightmarish transit per se, right? So does that make sense? Hopefully that helps, Renee. But let's talk about Neptune and Saturn together. This is something I'm doing a talk on in the new year in one of my webinars. And what we have to remember is that when Saturn and Neptune were discovered, they were discovered together. This is something that I've presented on for many years now in my a class that I teach called The Mystical Saturn. Something I presented at like some conferences and stuff like that. And prior to the advent of the outer planets and the discovery of Neptune, Saturn was very much the planet associated with everything we now associate with Neptune. And the reason for that is that Saturn sits at the edge of the visible cosmos. You've heard me say this on my YouTube channel at least 100 times. Sitting as the gatekeeper between the kind of cosmos as we know it and see it, the manifest universe, and that which is numinous and otherworldly and mystical that lies beyond the boundaries or threshold of this world. And so Saturn is a planet that is always about, remember, Saturn rules oppositions in astrology. It is the planet associated with the opposition, we should say. And so Saturn is about the tension that we hold between the limits and or realities of our world, of the mundane, material, manifest universe, and that which is somehow ideal, transcendent, subliminal, imaginative, romantic, subtle, timeless, otherworldly, that seems to be here, but also exist beyond here in a way that's very real to us and that creates a very real tension in us. It's the longing that we feel as romantics. It's the longing that we feel as seekers for something more. It's got to be something more than this, right? That's the feeling. And Saturn is the planet that was traditionally associated with the tension of that feeling, which is why it was associated with the melancholic temperament, for example, which was very creative, very mystical, very contemplative, and possibly very depressive. Melancholics could be people who are just like so stuck in the mundane and the real and the earthy, and they're like, weighed down by it to the point of being kind of like Eeyore. But on the other hand, the melancholic temperament on a spectrum could include people who are contemplatives living in caves, on the side of a mountain away from the world, meditating on infinity, right? So Saturn is a very interesting planet in that respect. And prior, again, to the discovery of Neptune, Saturn was the planet that really connected us to the tension we feel between that which is sort of invisible, timeless, and immaterial, and that which is, on the other hand, material. So there is just this incredible dynamic that exists between Saturn and Neptune. And again, when Neptune was discovered, it was in a conjunction with Saturn, as though Saturn was helping us make visible the invisible, as though the tension that Saturn naturally entails was an integral part of starting to understand and articulate something about Neptune that is also here. That's not just beyond Saturn, but that's within the gate of Saturn. And that tension is always what Saturn's been pointing to, but it's interesting how Neptune makes it so much more clear for us now as astrologers. And so paradoxically, Neptune, a planet of fog, creates clarity, right? So anyhow, the point is, when you combine these two planets together, you have some interesting tensions that they create. Let's go to the dark side first. When Saturn and Neptune get together, especially in a conjunction, our painful awareness of all that we are limited by, of all that stands opposed to us somehow in the way that we are, and represents a clear contrast of what we cannot be, what we fall short of, what the world falls short of, what we yearn for but cannot reach, becomes acutely, we become acutely aware of it. And painfully so, to the point where people can get depressed and melancholic in a not so great way, can get turned to codependencies and addiction and depression and angst. And it can heighten the sense of like a dystopic, nightmarish feeling of not being able to stay in something blissful, in the same way that a nightmare interrupts your sleep, right? And so that, on the level of Saturn Neptune, is the shadow that in many ways people will point to and say, oh, it's this dystopian nightmare that we're going to, like that. Fair enough. I mean, it like Saturn Neptune contacts can be, like a kind of like this romantic, angsty frustration, right? Or a feeling of just being so far from something ideal, of having fallen. It's like the image of a fallen angel, or the image of the image of getting booted out of paradise, that kind of thing. But that awareness is archetypal. If you take it literally, you're screwed, right? If you take it literally, you're screwed. If you embrace it as an archetypal reality, as so many mystics and poets have done, Mother Teresa comes to mind. I remember when I was in Calcutta and I went to see the convent of Mother Teresa. I think that's what they call it, a convent. Anyway, and I got to see her living quarters, and I got to see her tomb. I guess that's what it's called. And one of the things that I found really interesting was that they had this display of her diaries and her journals. And there were some people around the time of after her passage that were questioning, whether or not she should be a saint or not, which, whatever. But they were debating it. And one of the reasons that they debated whether or not she should be a saint is because they found in her journals, in her private conversations with God, that there was this really intense tone of depression and hopelessness and longing and frustration and doubt That's Saturn Neptune. But Mother Teresa knew very well, and the point of this presentation in Calcutta in her little convent in her near her tomb was to illustrate that for her, she knew and understood these feelings to be an essential part of the journey of faith. She knew, in other words, not to take her feelings literally, but to understand them as an archetypal part of the journey of faith. You will doubt. You will go through the shadows in the valley. You will go through times and spaces that feel like dystopian nightmares where everything is falling short. Nothing feels satisfactory. You feel far away from God. You feel ejected from Eden. You feel ostracized. You feel alone. You feel apart, right? But great mystics in all traditions that I've ever studied, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, ancient contemplative Christianity, Hermeticism, great mystics all know that these dark nights of the soul are absolutely fertile, rich places that you have to understand as real and not they feel problematic, but their existence is not a problem. The existence of these spaces is not a problem that needs to be solved. It's a valley that needs to be walked through. Nightmares are not a problem to be solved. They are a reality that we courageously walk through, right? And we can lose total faith while we walk through them, as long as we know, yes, it's very normal to lose faith while walking through a nightmare. So that perspective is paradoxically empowering, and it is the richest substance of our faith is really the way that we have allowed ourselves to go through darkness. So that could be Saturn Neptune, and that's a positive way of then looking at the darkness that Saturn Neptune entails. But there's another side, and the other side is obviously much more positive and easy to deal with. And I honestly prefer that people talk about this maybe even more than the dark side, because it's just too easy to talk about the dark side and then think everything's doomed. And Neptune was in Aries when the Civil War happened. Oh my God, all this. But the other thing that Neptune and Saturn contacts make us aware of is the gravitas, the seriousness, the dedication, the devotion, the exclusivity of faith, of practice, of any kind of commitment that is required of us if we seek something transcendent. Let's just put it very simply. In Aries, right? A very muscular Mars-like sign, there will be a tendency to, let me just use an example that's relevant to my life, which is bodybuilding, which has become a part of my way of taking care of myself and like a hobby for me that is really, it's like a love that I have, and I've had many different practices that I've used as like my spiritual practice. So think about, it's very martial, right? It's very Marsy bodybuilding. It's very kind of athletic and muscular and stuff like that. But if you are a bodybuilder and you seek to compete in the Olympia, which is like the big competition, one of the big competitions, the amount of dedication required, the consistency, the practice, the food, the sleep, the rest, the training that is required to reach a peak physical condition like that, which is temporary, by the way, you can't stay there. And this is part of what we'll get to with Saturn Neptune as well, but is extraordinary. The amount of discipline required to become an Olympian in track, right? Or to become a masterful musician, or to become a good astrologer, whatever the case might be, requires dedication and effort and consistent practice and focus over long periods of time. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras tells us very simply that what's required to achieve yoga, right? Union between the soul and God, is consistent practice over a long period of time, uninterrupted, with devotion, right? A long time of practice for practicing for long periods of time, over a long period of time, with consistency, regularity, and devotion. That's Saturn Neptune. If you want to put them together in the most positive sense, Saturn Neptune says you want that transcendent, beautiful thing. It's your business, it's your relationship, it's a creative act or craft, whatever it is. It will require that mature, steady, focused, exclusive commitment that Saturn entails when it contacts Neptune. You want the dream? Wall yourself into a little space of complete focus and dedication. This is why Saturn Neptune is also associated with people who spend long periods of time studying or researching things with complete sort of an immersive quality. Now, many of us, I'm exaggerating, like many of us are not going to suddenly become like, completely focused on getting a black belt in something, right? But Saturn Neptune will also bring our attention to the great work, the great effort, the great sacrifice that is required for anything we long for to be more than wishful thinking or a fantasy that ends up doing nothing but bumming us out because we can't achieve. Saturn Neptune will say, no, you can achieve it. You just have to be consistent. You have to be focused, and you have to be mature about what's required. So in Aries, I suspect we're going to see all of those qualities, the dark and the light, with respect to things that are very martial, right? So you have, the hero's mission, the development of strength, the development of confidence, a redefining of what it means to be strong and independent and individualistic, emphasis on fighting for things, great missions and crusades. Some of that may be actually pretty dark, right? But you get the idea. So that was a great question. Love to, that, and that's a big transit that's coming, right? So a good one to be thinking about right now. So I really appreciate that question so much. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. So, Mama Bear says, what is your take on the symbolic significance of a fixed grand cross? Well, someone answered the question down here. They said, Adam doesn't believe in patterns like crosses, etc. People know my cynical nature. No, I do believe in grand crosses, right? Like if you have planets that are all in a degree-based configuration around all four signs, that is significant. It's something that doesn't have a specific technical name or meaning in ancient astrology, but I can't imagine any astrologer at any point in the history of astrology not paying attention to something like that. It's just that there's not one way of reading it. One of the things that we have to remember about an astrological chart is that it is like a mandala. And so the reason that you have for approaching the mandala, the kind of meditative angle that's leading you into the chart. And by the way, that angle that leads us into the chart is thought of as like us following the coattails of Hermes based on what the client is there for. What do they want to talk about? What are their questions? That will then take us into perhaps focusing on one of the planets in that grand cross. And then the testimonies of the other planets mean something different because we have a different topical starting point. Context is everything. So you never want to, this is just the way that I teach, you never want to look at a chart as though it has static meanings. It's multivalent, it's multidimensional, it's highly contextual. It is not who you are. It is something that has the power as an oracle to speak to things that you approach it with. It is more like an oracular, like mantic device. And the context of why we approach the chart will lead us to look at something like a fixed grand cross from different angles, which will then speak differently. If you start with the planet in a fixed grand cross in Aquarius versus starting with the one in Taurus, that means something. It's different. And the planets will speak differently depending on which topical starting point you're using. You don't usually in the history of astrology look and read a chart in some holistic, generic way as though it means something static. It's much more contextual in the same way that when people say, what does this tarot card mean in isolation? You can give a list of meanings, right? But if they say, well, what do these 4 cards mean in combination, right? You have 4 cards, let's say, set up in a little cross. I don't know any tarot practitioner. I mean, you could speak creatively about the juxtapositions between the archetypes and create some really impressive correlations. And of course, that's like wide open for any of us to do. But a sensitive tarot practitioner, the very first answer that they'll give was, those 4 cards have a million ways of interacting. And it really depends. Those 4 cards will come to life and speak very specifically in their combination, depending on the reading. What is the question being asked, and how are these cards related to the question being asked? That is how you end up reading their significance. And that's why I say I don't think of grand crosses meaning anything, right? So I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Nothing can be seen for its truest meaning without context. Exactly. That is a truth that all diviners, just with time and experience, know, but rarely we rarely articulate for other people. And it is one of the most liberating and simple ideas that can save us a lot of time and headache trying to, pretend like we're learning a system that has all these objective meanings and rules, when all of the techniques we learn are actually more like tools that we use rooted in context. Okay. Hi, Adam. How do you think it would manifest for a person if the benefic of the sect plus malefic contrary to sect are co-present in a house? Okay, so an example of this would be, and this is a Hellenistic concept if you're not familiar with it. Look, if you have, let's say, in a daytime chart, you have Jupiter, who is the benefic of the daytime sect, in the 10th house. But you also have Mars in the 10th house, who is the malefic contrary to sect. That's an interesting situation, because what it would often point to, let's say it's Jupiter Mars, that would probably point to, in the 10th house, as one possibility that comes to my mind, is of someone who has a kind of executive, powerful executive quality, along with maybe mastery or leadership, or an ability to take on positions of power or importance or notoriety, like someone who has could be like a coach, or like maybe even like some ranking official in the military, kind of Jupiter, Jupiter Mars, or maybe someone who has entrepreneurial qualities, as well as and like risk taking, as well as maybe expansive, optimistic qualities that make them charismatic and successful in pioneering things. Those are all Jupiter Mars things, right? So you're just kind of putting them together generically. Now, when it comes to Mars being the malefic, so Jupiter, I would say just sort of generically, as the benefic of sect, would grant an ability to be successful with those kinds of archetypal endeavors in their combination. What you'd want to be careful of is that Mars is going to run hot, right? That's a simple explanation for Mars being contrary to sect in a daytime chart, is that Mars will run hot. So Mars running hot in that house could mean that you're hot-headed, you're impulsive, you're a little bit domineering, you have a tendency to get into power struggles with other people as you try to perpetuate the things you're charismatic about. And I would therefore look for that archetypal combination as generally expressing positively, with the Mars elements of the combination perhaps presenting some of the problems. That would be one way of building that delineation together. I hope that makes sense and is useful. All right. Oh my gosh. Taz says, curious your take on stationary planets and birth charts and how they can manifest. That's a great question. It really depends on which station we're talking about and which planet we're talking about. So if we're talking, let's just say, for example, that we're talking about Venus. Venus is stationing to turn retrograde, has a very different meaning than Venus has stationed at the time of birth to turn direct. Okay, so one very simple meaning, and this is something I break down, by the way, if you want a deep dive into the nuances of Mercury and Venus's cycles, which parallel one another in their synodic cycles with the sun. So their cycles are similar in symbolic meaning. You can go to the shop page on my website, and there's a masterclass series, like 8 to 10 hours worth of content on the cycles of Mercury and Venus that I did, I think it was 2 years ago. Anyway, when Venus is stationing to turn retrograde, what you're anticipating is that at some point in the life, whatever Venus rules, which could be the house topics of Libra and Taurus within the birth chart, could be natural topics that Venus represents, like love or friendships or women or something like that. Whatever Venus represents in the chart, which could be many different things, you will anticipate that there will be a reversal of circumstance, or a period of breakdown, difficulty, crisis, and transformation. That would be maybe a slightly like messier version of it, but also just a shift in plotline or circumstance that's very dramatic and plays a very important part of the narrative of the lifetime. That's a stationing planet to turn retrograde. Now, if a planet is stationing and turning direct, and let's say it's Venus, everything that Venus represents in the chart, all the different possibilities, those topics could then go from a period of delay, setback, or almost like something that's slowed down or has a hard time developing or showing itself or bearing its fruit, that in time will progressively become easier and will bear its fruit and show its results and become less impeded or sort of slow to show. That's one way of thinking about it, because the planet picking up speed and turning direct is sort of gaining momentum, and its fruits will come a little bit delayed. On the other hand, a planet stationing to turn direct, like Venus, could also mean that if at first you deal with setbacks and what feels like real blockages around the karma of whatever Venus rules, in addition to, say, love, then in time, the direct motion of Venus will tend to mean that there is a process of recovery and improvement. And that's the general meaning of planets turning retrograde versus direct. Although what's interesting is that a retrograde planet doesn't necessarily mean everything turns to shit and that's it. It can mean that there's more of a period of things starting off looking kind of like okay, and then going through crisis, and then through some kind of regenerative, transformative, catharsis, Venus is remade. That's also quite frequent. It's just the process of the breakdown is a little bit more pronounced with Venus retrograde, stationing to turn retrograde, whereas when Venus is stationing to turn direct, there's more like a sense of waiting for something that is more slow to develop. There's less of the sense of impending crisis and more of a sense of slow but gradual improvement. So those are also, by the way, just some of the ways in which we can interpret the changing of direction. Remember that context is everything. The house location, the dignity of Venus, the aspects or testimonies Venus is receiving from other planets, the sect status of Venus. So many things can create little, interesting little wrinkles in the plot, What transits are the aliens surfacing from the ocean with or showing their presence in 2025? Pluto and Aquarius, come on. Tonight, by the way, you can sign up on my website under the live talks page, nightlightastrology.com. I'm giving a talk on Pluto into Aquarius, on AI, aliens, and New World Orders. That should be fun. Yeah. JJ, do you have advice for how to ask someone whether they are open to discussing astrology? Well, here's what I would do. If I had a friend or something like that, and I was, or maybe you're dating someone or whatever, and you're sharing things about yourself, what I would do is at some point when it felt appropriate, just sharing that it's something you really love, and then just kind of gauging the response. Oh, wow, that's weird, versus like, oh, really? I like astrology too. Kind of feeling it out. I think it's always problematic when you try to talk about something spiritual, religious, metaphysical, and it's very clear that you have an agenda that you'd like to talk about it. I don't know. It just gives me traveling Bible salesman vibes. Just don't do it. Don't do it. That's what I say. Just let it come up naturally. And, I think that's always going to be healthier. That's my advice. Okay. Karma S says, Saturn gets easier to work with over time. When I try to fight against the Saturn lessons, they are rough. Yeah. At first we tend to curse Saturn early in life. And as we go on, there is this feeling that we have become exactly who it was inevitable for us to come. And there's a sort of tragic and very beautiful inevitability to the cultivation of character that happens naturally with time. We realize that it's been all of our worst efforts and all of our failures and all of our ignorance that has been just as vital as any heroic efforts we've made that has brought us to this space. That kind of, that way we have of holding the tension of our good spots and our bad spots, and understanding that our soul, which is more important than whether we're good or bad, is like something that's been forged in the tension of those opposites. Saturn is that kind of realization. That's why, people like true elders are like humble, self-effacing, and confident all at once. It's because they know that it wasn't just their effort that has made them into anything. It's also been all of their ignorance and unconsciousness and everything else. And there's an appreciation for that. That's very Saturnian. There's an appreciation for the bitterness of life that makes it sweet. They go together. Yeah. And that's why they say Saturn gets easier over time. We tend to have a a kind of reverence and appreciation for Saturn as we age. And also Saturn can just suck. Right? All right. Maddie asks, hi, Adam, what would you look for in a natal chart to find physical chronic illness? Yeah, good question. You know, I would generally look for the presence of planets in the first house, the 12th and the 6th, the rulers of those places in relation to the luminaries, or the luminaries placed in the 12th or 6th, hard aspects from the malefics, Mars or Saturn, to the sun and moon, or the ascendant ruler. There's a lot of things that can show up as people encountering difficulties with their vitality and health. Usually it revolves around the luminaries or the ascendant ruler, the 6th and the 12th houses in particular, or challenging placements in the first, or with some difficult testimony to the ascendant ruler. Those are like the big ones. But it's, you know, there's so many different ways that things can show. Yeah, so those would be like your kind of like first entry in the textbook. I hope that's useful. And remember that often transits to those planets will serve as releasing points for the karma, and people often heal and transform illnesses. So nothing you see in a chart should be ever be assumed to be static and unchangeable. Okay. Let's see. Oh. Looking at all these questions, so many good questions. I've heard a lot of astrologers talk about how terrible Aries, Venus in Aries is, and in Aries in 6th house is. Can you speak a little bit to Venus in 6th house in Aries? Okay, I get what you're saying. So yeah, well, think about it this way. The 6th house was called Mala Fortuna, which means bad fortune. It was the joy of Mars, the lesser in fortune, the lesser malefic, or the planet that is associated with things in the realm of fortune that we find to be like stressful, or that we are more adverse to. Like if you think of adversity, you're thinking of Mars. So we have to recognize that the language of astrology is meant in large part to describe the relative, subjective, karmic world that we live in. By that, we mean the world of cause and effect, the world of chains of actions and reactions. And we experience some of them as subjectively more beneficial or positive, and others as more destructive or difficult, even though on a spiritual level, all of them are divine. And the spiritual person, and the reason we study astrology, is usually so that we can develop that kind of equanimity, or develop that kind of appreciation for adversity and difficult things as potential, potentially meaningful, or something we can learn from, or grow from, or even find to be paradoxically beautiful. Astrology gives us that. That is the beautiful gift of astrology. It doesn't help if we try to start off using astrology by imagining that none of these distinctions exist, that we're beyond them because we're spiritual. No, we're beyond them only because we have met them with a spiritual perspective. But that means we honor and acknowledge their existence first. I would rather not get injured. I would rather earn money and like feed my family. You know, I would rather not be unemployed on disability because something bad happened, right? And I'd rather be able to be healthy and functioning and like supporting the family. That's a basic distinction. And if anyone tried to tell me that it wasn't spiritual of me to have that distinction and that preferencing, I would say that they're not really acknowledging what it's like to be a human, right? So we have to remember that the language of astrology is about first acknowledging the kind of consensus reality that we live in. And then it is about contextualizing that within a divine, eternal view of reality, such that we can not be limited by those categories of our judgment, right? But the 6th house is a place that is associated with all of the hard, difficult work of existence. That's Mars. You know, I have to work. I'm doing this live stream, And while I love you guys and I love doing this, like I would rather be like, I don't know, sitting in a sauna somewhere, or you know what I mean? Like or maybe listening to a podcast I like, you guys. No, I'm just kidding. So so anyway, Mars is like the adversity of life. I mean, even like, I don't know, like, okay, remember that song, Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams? He said, I got my first real six string. I played it till my fingers bled, right? That's the sixth house too. If you love something and care about something and you're passionate about it, you sacrifice, you work, you sort of slave over it in passionate love. That's the sixth house. The sixth house is an act of sacrificial service insofar as we burn, we suffer, we sacrifice on behalf of things we care about. So it's a very beautiful house in that respect. Venus in that house, in Aries, Mars's sign, may be someone who is passionate and romantically fueled by that kind of sacrificial burning. What's wrong about that? What's wrong with that? Nothing. This could be someone who is a fitness coach. Venus in the sixth house. I burn, I sweat, and I guide people through feeling healthy and happy and enjoying their life force because I teach them the value of burning, right? That's Venus in the sixth house is like maybe a aerobics instructor or Pilates or a weightlifting coach, or right? Or someone who teaches you how to form a business and how to set up all the practices you need, which, you know, maybe you have a hard time doing because they involve work and it's hard to get motivated. You need a motivational coach who says, hey, here's how you get passionately engaged in all the things you don't want to do, but you have to do. And here's why it's going to be actually beneficial for you to do them. And I can spin it so that you know that this is going to be a beautiful, valuable thing to do. Like Venus in the sixth house can make hard things beautiful, right? So those are all possibilities that exist there in the sixth house. But you can't whitewash the sixth house to start with. But you also can't imagine that the sixth house is just good or bad. It's like what we have to be more diverse with how we think about an archetypal field, like a house. So the sixth house might be chronic disease, things that we can't resolve. Like there's a way in which the dishes downstairs in my kitchen will never be resolved. Like between now and the time my kids leave for college, which is a long time from now, you know, there's going to be a renewable stressor, a chop wood, carry water reality of my day-to-day existence that is those fucking dishes. Fuck the dishes. But they're going to be there every day. And how do I bring some joy or some happiness or even some enjoyment into the inevitable daily acute chronic stressors, right? This is why it's called a house of slavery, sickness, chronic disease, but also sacrifice and service, because it's a house that just requires that we deal with the Mars-like adversity of existence. If you want to eat, you got to go out and hunt. I mean, in like thinking about 30,000 years ago, if you want to be safe, you have to protect the perimeter, right? If you want to exist, you always have to exist with an awareness that there could be enemies. The sixth house was the house of enemies and hostility. In Indian astrology, the sixth house is related to debts that we have to other people that will come through conflicts. And so the karma of conflicts in our life that we will have to deal with will come in that house. Could that mean for Venus that therefore you have some difficult karma with respect to love, sex, marriage, relationships? Yeah. Venus in a Mars ruled sign is in her detriment in the sixth house. That could very well mean that it's hard for you to maintain or keep the peace with friends or with lovers because of a propensity for conflict there karmically. But that doesn't mean you can't resolve that karma by learning. Because we're here to learn. And just because the chart describes the karma doesn't mean you can't learn and grow and change in relation to the karma. I mean, apparently some karma we can't change and some karma we can, but the hell, if any astrologer knows the difference between the two, I'd suggest that they don't, that they can't. And so we always treat karma. We should always look at karma in a chart like, look, if you're someone who is, you know, working with a chart that's got Venus and Aries in the sixth, and you have lots of conflicts in your relationships with other people, or you feel enslaved in your relationships with other people or whatever, then work on it, right? That's it. And to whatever extent you can, become self-reflective. If you need to be more compromising, if you need to be less selfish, if you need to choose partners who aren't domineering, whatever the case might be, that just because there's a difficult thing, I mean, look at how many people in this life have had experiences of relationships that have been challenging, that have involved power struggles, that have involved some unequalness and some tendency for conflict. Have not many of the people that you have known in your life, or you yourself, gone through periods of time in your life where that was the theme and you learned to change it, right? So when they say Venus in Aries is terrible in the 6th house or whatever, it's like, remember that all they're really saying, if you were to tell them to speak that not in terms of some kind of pseudoscientific, objectifying, mechanical language that is dead and depressing, right? And think about it in terms of the language it's actually translating from the symbolic level. What they would actually be saying is, anyone who has a pattern of experiencing conflict in relationships is doomed. Well, how realistic is that, right? Is it true that some people experience conflict in relationships? Sure. Is it also true that many people who experience conflict in relationships work on and change the pattern? Yeah, a lot of people do. I've counseled thousands and thousands of people over my career and seen far more people who are willing to and capable of changing things in their life than they are of living with the same old thing. And then that's the beauty of the archetypes, is that they're multivalent. And so Venus in the 6th can come to mean different things at different points in your life, which is why we can never read it static and must always rely on the context the client brings to us. Venus in Aries in your 20s might mean something different that Venus in Aries in your 40s means, or your 50s. So I hope that's useful. Okay. Oh boy, here we go. So many questions. Wow, this is incredible. Thank you guys. I wish I could do, there's so many I'm looking at going, oh, that'd be a really good one, Wow. I like this comment from Chelsea. She says, health crisis or chronic illnesses under this placement are often transformative. They may push you to explore alternative medicine, psychology, or deep self-awareness to address root causes. Yeah, totally. That can be one nice way in which they express. I like that. Yeah. Sometimes you also can't figure it out, so I just want to point out that someone echoes my sentiments. Okay. All right. Well, I think what I'm going to do now is I am going to, holy cow, I'm scrolling down to the bottom now. All right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you about the Kickstarter campaign, why I think that it's worth supporting, how you can support it, and the different rewards that are available when you do support it. And then I am going to then invite some people into the studio to join me for some readings. By the way, it is just it's such an honor to just come on and shoot the breeze about astrology. Like, the ability that, most of the time I'm on script, right? I've got a talk for the day with outline points that I'm going through. I've got curriculum I'm moving through in my programs. The Q&A sessions are usually revolving around the curriculum of the day. So to just come on and get to talk about different topics, freewheeling, is like, I don't know, it's just like unstructured playtime for me. So I just really appreciate the opportunity. All right. Let's see where we are. Okay, so Kickstarter. Here is how to participate. I am going to post the link in the comments section. You can find the link to the Kickstarter page on the Nightlight website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you go to the website, you'll see a 2025 Kickstarter link. We are at 99 backers right now in the first 3 days. That's fantastic. That's really good. We're outpacing ourselves from last year, which is really good news. So let me take you over to the Kickstarter right now. And you'll see back this project right here. And then when you scroll down, you'll see the pledges. And I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that we have. And hopefully, one of them will be appealing. And then I'll tell you about why I do the Kickstarter, what it supports, and a thought for the day. And then we'll move into some chart reading. So you donate on the $25 level. The Astrology of 2025 calendar is a PDF calendar we design. It's digital. You can open it on your phone or your desktop or laptop or whatever. and follow along with the transits of the year that I will be tracking on my channel. So if you kind of want to know where's Adam going to go this month, you'll have this calendar that will show you where I'm going to go and the transits I will be working with or choosing from. This is a comprehensive calendar, so it really does include everything from the outer planets through the traditional 7. We don't have asteroids included, but a great way to just track where we're heading on the channel as the year goes on, and maybe to work around your schedule. That's just a little simple one we give at the $25 level. If you scroll down a little bit more, the Astrology of 2025 audio video is a lecture talk that I give on all of the major astrology of 2025. I do not give a talk on the YouTube channel looking at all of the astrology of the year ahead. I make that exclusive for Kickstarter backers. So if you want to hear my thoughts on all of the major astrology for the next year, that's the reward you would choose there. You can also choose multiple rewards and kind of bundle them together. The Oracle Speaks at the $75 level is my new book. And when you sign up for this, you are getting the audiobook chapters and the text chapters released one at a time as the book is written. So right now there are 7 out of 12 chapters that have been written, and you will get those right away. You can listen to them as audiobook or read them. And then the new chapters, as they're released, you'll have early access to probably about a year to a year and a half before it comes out in print. So that's a kind of fun one. That book is all about the stories that are meant to try to capture the inner experience of developing a relationship with oracles, which I think most of us probably have a story of our own. So anyway, scroll down, you'll see the year ahead horoscopes reading. This is one of the best deals of the Kickstarter because you are getting 12 horoscopes. So the package includes all 12 signs, and they are 30 to 45 minute horoscopes for each sign, breaking down all of the major transits of 2025. So this would be like your monthly horoscope, but for the entire year ahead, 30 to 45 minutes per each sign. And when you get this, you get all 12 of them. So you could listen to, your husband's or your wife's or a friend or what have you. So we used to do it where you just picked your sun or rising sign, but we decided we would just include all of them together this year and make it a little simpler and a bundle that's kind of more exciting. Scroll down, and then you're going to find on the next level of prizes and rewards that we have our 2024 Masterclass series. So this is 8 to 10 hours worth of content on each topic. This is at the $125 level. You can choose 8 to 10 hours worth of talks on the fixed stars, on the transits of the outer planets, on the lunar nodes in ancient astrology, or on the archetypes of the astrologer, which is a way of looking at the signatures of astrology that exist in the birth chart. It's kind of fun for people who are into astrology to find where their love of astrology actually shows up in the chart. There are 8 to 10 hours worth of content on all of those master classes. Astrology for Complete Beginners is on sale. This is a 10-hour course for absolute beginners, a good gift for someone who maybe doesn't know anything about astrology. That is something that's done. It's all recorded content, and we have some bonus material and stuff like that, flashcards that will help you. That's for total beginners. If you're just learning the language, starting, from nothing, that's the way to go. All right, scrolling down, I have a couple of readings. The Ask 3 Horary questions is a fantastic way to save on a bundle of horary readings that you can use with me anytime you want during 2024. They're good until the end of the year, or 25, I should say. They're good till the end of 2025. And those 3 questions, basically you just email me anytime that you have a predictive question you'd like to ask via horary. A predictive horary question is a yes or no style question that's like, will I get the job? Will we get together? Will we move in together? Will I get the house I put an offer on? So predictive yes or no based questions that horary can address. You get 3 of them, and you can email me throughout the year, and I respond via email with an analysis of the chart and my judgment of the question. Those are really handy because you can kind of use them for you kind of 3 different takes you can use them on throughout the year. And I find that a lot of people really love those. Then we are all sold out of the mini readings. They sold out like right away. I had 30 of them available. And those are the kinds of readings that I'm about to do for some people here live. So I had 30 of those available. They're all gone. The 2023 archived masterclass bundle will get you all of the masterclasses from 2023. It's like, let's see, it's about between 30 and 40 hours worth of content on the mysteries of the moon cycles, cycles of Venus and Mercury, zodiacal releasing, and the study of temperament in ancient astrology and the birth chart. Those are all masterclasses bundled together. You can get the 24 masterclass bundle, the individual classes we just went through above. You can also get our Roots and Spheres moon circle. This is a moon circle that meets under new and full moons all throughout 2025. We break down the astrology in circle together. We develop rituals and plant diets that are meant to accompany each moon cycle. And then we talk and break them down and process together in community. That moon circle class is on sale through the Kickstarter as well. That's a really fun program. Really enjoy the community space that we've developed there. And my wife, Ashley, who's an herbalist, leads the plant portions of those talks, and I lead the astrology. The 2025 Masterclass series is on sale. Those are all explorations of the houses connected by trines. So in the winter, we will be looking at the 1st, 9th, and 5th houses through trines and triplicity rulers of those houses. In the spring, we'll be looking at the 10th, 2nd, and 6th houses. The summer, we'll be looking at the 7th, 11th, and 3rd. And the fall, we'll be looking at the 4th, 8th, and 12th, and really trying to develop an understanding of how these houses are interconnected in their meanings in the chart, and how we can end up delineating 3 houses at once rather than only knowing how to delineate houses one at a time. So that's going to be a great series. It's on sale, obviously. My wife teaches 2 years worth of herbal apprenticeship courses. She has a master's degree in clinical herbal medicine, has been training herbalists, was a board member of the American Herbalist Guild for a long time. So if you're interested in herbalism and follow Ashley's channel, her 1st-year course and her new 2nd-year course are both on sale through the Kickstarter. And then probably our greatest offering, which are the major discounts on our programs. And so the course bundles are the best way to save. This course, like you can attend one nightlight course. So that could be our year 1 program, our year 2 program, our year 3 program, or our horary program. You could also use it toward Roots and Spheres or the masterclass if you wanted to, although the individual prices for those are a better deal until you get into the bundles later, and then it kind of becomes equal. But at any rate, you can attend any of our major programs, one of them at the $900 level. That is $400 off the early bird rate, which is the best sale we run normally during the year, and it's half off the normal tuition rate with tuition plan. If you scroll down, you can then bundle 2 courses together. You could do year 1 and year 2, or if you're in year 1, you could take year 2 and year 3. That then takes the courses down to $750 individually, which increases the savings. $200 more at $1,700, you can combine 3 classes, and that's an incredible savings. And then, of course, our 4-class pass takes each class down to $500 if you want to sort of go through our master's certificate program, which would be all 4 of our year-long courses. You can take them at your pace. You can start them whenever you want. You can renew them whenever you want. So we only run this sale once a year. We did like a flash sale the year before, but this year we ran no sales. And the only time that we're going to run these sales going forward will be during the Kickstarter. So if you are someone who wants to study with us and really dive deep into the programs we offer, the bundles are the best savings of the Kickstarter for sure. So thank you guys for listening. I'll say a few things finally in closing about the content. So the content on this channel is something that I produce 5 days a week, year round, and have done so for 11 years. 2 years prior to that in written form before I did any fundraising to support the content production. This is a sadhana for me. This is a spiritual practice. This is something that I have done, rain or sunshine, snow, whatever kind of weather is going on for me personally, collectively. I show up and I create content. And I create content that I hope will be of spiritual and psychological value for you as you are growing and learning along your path. That is my devotion. That's my offering. That's my service. And I show up here and I do it year round, day in and day out. And if I have anything to say about it, if the gods allow, I will be doing this for decades more to come. This is what I consider to be my legacy or my lineage or my contribution to the field of astrology. I want to be someone who showed up day in and day out for years and years and years and was a reliable place that you could tune in and reflect upon your life, your experience, and place it within a magical, divine universe. That's what I find value in. That's my spiritual practice. And I'm lucky enough that it happens to be my job. I don't believe that there are 72,000 people who subscribe to this channel now. And I believe that it should be free content and accessible content for everyone. So I don't want to use like subscription services or paywalls or anything like that. I want to keep it free. So the way that I try to earn a living through doing this is during the last 40 days of the year, I say, look, if you love this, if it's a part of your life that is meaningful and valuable, then please consider donating. When you donate, we don't, all donations are wonderful and accepted. We also want people to get something back for what they've given. So we try to offer meaningful rewards that are of value. And especially with our programs, we also, everything we do at Nightlight is rooted in the idea that astrology as a sacred topic should be accessible and not exclusive financially. So our programs are all need-based. We have many scholarships. Many people end up taking our programs for free or next to nothing. And that works because the Kickstarter works. Because then it doesn't place the pressure on me from a business standpoint to have bottom lines for my programs. Because the Kickstarter does well, there can be less pressure for my business model for everything else to have to perform in a certain way. And so the generosity of spirit is at the core of what I do and what I believe makes Nightlight special. Let's give this generously, and then let's ask people out there who can support, who have the means to do so, to support it, and everything works based off from that model. And that's the way we've been doing it for a long time. I want to point you guys to something really cool that we developed this past year that you guys helped us build, that was a work in progress and in line with our ethos and our overall mission. I'm going to take you over to the website. And when you go over to the website, click on book a reading, and you will see need-based astrology readings. And when you scroll down, you are going to find that we now have an affordable reading service that you helped us build from last year's Kickstarter. So we put this in place. We developed the infrastructure. We hired the contractors. We went through the process of hiring staff. Nightlight takes a very minimal amount of the revenue from this. At our lowest tier of alumni readers at the bottom, which are $49 per reading for an hour. These are very talented alumni from our programs who are at the stage where they just need to get experience doing readings. And so they're at the lowest price tier. We also don't take any cut from them. So they get to earn money. They get all of that. We don't take a penny from that. And then we take a very small amount from the next tier up and a very small amount from the next tier up. So we can just cover the cost of the infrastructure behind all of it. But this is a service that is meant to help build the careers of astrologers, to further the success of other people doing astrology, and to also make sure that people out there have tiered pricing so that people at different income levels can get a reading. So this, I just want to tell you guys, like, it is all of you who supported us last year that helped us build that. We also have a community herbal medicine garden we built where we host a whole series of events for the community, people who can come out, harvest and make their own medicine for free, take it home. We harvest medicine and give it away. We hold free events in the garden. You helped us build that. All of our affordable pricing that we offer, the sliding scales we offer, they work because consistently year in and year out, the Kickstarter works. We support our staff through the Kickstarter. It's part of how I support myself and my family, of course. But the model is one of generosity. We can make things super, super accessible because a very small amount of the 72,000 people who subscribe to this channel pitch in. So I want to thank you for that, and just ask that if you haven't yet donated, if you are open to doing so, we would really appreciate it. The link to the Kickstarter, again, is there. It's going to be in the description of this video replay, in the link of the comment section of this video replay, and then you're also going to find it on the website, nightlightastrology.com. If you go to nightlightastrology.com, you will find the link 2025 Kickstarter. If you can't donate, if you can't afford to donate, please, sometimes people send us emails feeling guilty that they can't donate. Send us a prayer, burn some sage, ask that we would be supported and that we would continue to use whatever success we have for good things. Those prayers are deeply valuable to us as well. All right, so on that note, let us now open up for some readings. We're one backer away from 100, by the way. We're trying to get to 1,937 backers by January 1st. So you guys have almost sent us over the 100 mark for the day. We really appreciate it. Okay, now, so here we are. And here's how you're going to join us. If you want to join for a reading, here's what you need to include. You need to email us. Email us grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. That's the email address that we use for the grabbed stories. You email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Include this: your name, date of birth, location of birth, time of birth, and any specific topics or questions you want to ask. So you're going to email us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com, with your name, date of birth, location of birth, time of birth, any specific topics or questions you want to ask. Don't write me a book. I don't have time. I just got to look at it quickly and invite some people in. I'm going to do so randomly. I will return a reply to your emails. So stay in touch with your email inbox. And I will email you back a link to join us in the studio. And then you're going to follow that link. You're going to be in a green room. You're going to see me talking and blah, blah, blah. And then I will call you in and we will put your birth chart up and look at it together. Please don't, if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to be looking at your birth chart publicly in a stream like this, don't come on. Just make sure you feel open to share your chart and a little bit of your life with the audience. That's important. And obviously it's a safe space, and we will take great care with what you share, but make sure you do feel comfortable sharing. Okay, so as that is taking place, I am going to just go and we're going to check the email inbox. All right, let's see here. All righty, I am going to, now some of you, I can see there's a ton of them coming in, so watch now as I'm going to send some replies to your email inbox, and you're just going to want to follow the link that I send you. And I'm going to call probably like 4 or 5 people, and just know that I may not be able to get to every single person who comes into the studio. So we're going to see how many we can get through. All right, sending some. I'm trying to see if I can find, because it's usually mostly women. So see if I can find at least one guy. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Yeah. So many wonderful, gosh. Yeah, I just really appreciate all of you. Okay, we're almost there. Give me just one more second. Okay, I have sent some links out to 5 or 6 people, so we're going to see how things go. And all right, just crossed 100 backers. That is fantastic. So now we just have 1,837 backers left to go. All right. By the way, I'll be doing these probably once a week between now and the end of the year. So next week, there will be another one scheduled. We just haven't scheduled it yet. So stay tuned for that. All right. I am going to bring Shannon on. Hey, Shannon, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going really good. Yeah, big fan. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, this is great. I am going to ask you, because I don't have the email. It's hard for me to pull up the email at the same time. Can you just tell me your date of birth again?
Yeah, it's May 25th, 1993.
And the time?
4:42 p.m. in Columbus, Ohio.
Anything specific that you've got on your mind?
Yeah, so I just started my own freelancing business this year, around June, and I'm just wondering, like, any advice that you could throw my way.
Sure. Okay. Let me just make sure we've got your chart. Does this look right? Libra rising?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, I use whole sign. I'm a Hellenistic practitioner. I use a lot of modern concepts too, but the whole sign arrangement. Have you seen your chart this way before?
I have. I follow both whole sign and Placidus just to kind of see like what works. So
Mhm.
I'm familiar with both.
It is fun to compare and contrast the ways that your chart shows up in like different house systems. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I've made up my mind. I think under Placidus, I have an eighth house sun, and I don't like that. So I like to follow traditional.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing that I always tell people is that whole sign houses in Hellenistic astrology are really meant to be utilized along an underlying whole sign philosophy that permeates like many levels of technique and theory. And so, in some ways, looking at your whole sign chart without kind of getting a little immersed in Hellenistic philosophy may not give you the best representation of the whole sign chart because you're kind of missing some of the tools to make the most sense of it.
Hmm.
So at some point, just I would tell anyone if you get interested in a whole sign the version of your chart, like take an immersive Hellenistic program at some point and see if it kind of deepens your understanding of that view. Because most people find that that's when it really clicks.
Yeah, that's really
But
cool.
yeah, so okay, so we're looking at specifically, there's some interest in career right now. Can you tell me what you do for a living?
So I do think this fits my birth chart very well. I'm an interior designer and I design hospitals. So I do some
Whoa.
freelancing for healthcare systems.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard anything like that before. It's interesting. My wife's uncle is the CEO of a hospital, and one of the things that he was really conscious about when they were, I guess, building a new building was being designed was the in internal spaces so that it would be more conducive to healing because he was of the opinion that sometimes hospital spaces are like functional but not healing in the like the layout. uh
Yeah,
Interesting, right?
yeah, they can definitely be very sterile. So I feel like that is the way, my field can be a little bit, I don't know, cold and just about aesthetics. And that's the way that I can show compassion for people.
That's fantastic. I love that. Okay, so let's now just take a look at, I think, some of the qualities that come to my mind right away, just kind of describing the career, right? The moon in Cancer in the 10th house. One way of looking at the 10th house is not just in terms of what you do, but the environment that somehow describes where you work or how you work. So I love the moon in Cancer for a caring profession, like a healthcare building, something like that. And I would suspect that it's important for you to feel emotionally concerned and committed to the things you're doing with the moon in Cancer there.
It is, and in career, that has been both a good and a bad thing.
Oh, right, because I'm sure, yeah, like it's like yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, that's not, the moon in Cancer is not conducive to office culture, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, totally. I think, when I look at the part of you that I imagine to be, kind of showing up in the chart as like architectural, I think of Jupiter and Libra in the first house, that ability to look at the big, broad design of something, which Jupiter and Libra is very good at. I see that in my own chart in conjunction with the ninth house ruler, getting me interested in something like astrology, which has this kind of, it's like a design language psychically and karmically. And then you kind of connect that to your ninth house planets in Gemini. And I think those planets up there show someone who could have an engineering mindset, a design, an architectural, a knowledge of very particular sort of mercurial skills, right? So I think the airy part of your chart is probably where I see that ability to do the design work and have a real sensitivity to that level of craft and stuff like that. Does that resonate?
Oh yeah, completely,
Yeah.
completely.
So when it comes to how might we see the career developing, what I hear in what you're saying, and you could just correct me if I'm wrong, I hear you saying something like, I'm maybe looking for something that will break the mold or provide more creative fulfillment or something that will shake things up a bit and maybe provide more like enjoyment or investment somehow. Is that kind of the right thing you're looking for as an arc in your career? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. Like when you're working for a firm, you have to take the projects that are given to you. Like you do not get to decide what you want. And so when you go out on your own, it's a little bit like the wild, wild west, and that like you can kind of do anything. And I don't know. I see my career going in a bunch of different directions. I'm obviously at my Saturn return. It's been brutal.
yeah.
So I don't know. That's a very big, I don't even know if that was a question. That's just very like big and open-ended.
Yeah, no, I mean, the reason that I'm asking is because I'm really trying to think about which planetary transit might provide you with a little bit of what you're asking about, right? It's always important for me to try to like tell you what's relevant to what you're actually concerned with. So
Yeah.
if you're concerned with kind of the arc of your career right now, the
Yeah, I think
transit
so.
is that's kind of the general area, right?
Yeah.
Right. So let me just stop sharing this for a second so I can bring up the transit bi-wheel. Here's what I would look for in your chart as like the promise of some really big shifts or changes in your career. Can you see the double wheel now?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So let's take this ahead to one of the biggest transits coming next year. We see that Uranus is going to be entering your ninth house and slowly moving into a conjunction with your sun. Now, at the exact same time, we see, of course, Pluto has just ingressed into Aquarius and will be connecting through a trine with Uranus from your fifth house. That Pluto will be simultaneously trining your Jupiter, trining your sun, creating a little bit of like a transiting grand trine, right? It's not like a natal grand trine, but so this will develop this connection between these planets and placements in your chart over the course of 2025, and then it really pops in 2026. You can see here earlier in 2026, we have Pluto right there, and Pluto this is like February of 2026. So just a little over a year from right now, is trining both of these planets. Now, following that, I mean, you're going to get a taste for this starting in like July of 2025 and all the way through September, October. The Pluto Uranus connection is very close, but not quite on Jupiter and the sun yet, right? So it's kind of giving you a preview. Then 2026, everything really sort of explodes, where now you see now how Uranus is on your sun by July of 2026 in a conjunction.
Yeah.
Pluto is trining your sun in a conjunction, trining your sun and trining your natal Jupiter. Uranus is also trining your natal Jupiter, etc. So
cool. That is so exciting. I'm so excited.
Very exciting. So let's talk about what kind of change this is likely to bring. First of all, when I think about the sun in any birth chart, it's the core symbol that we look at for the broadest sense of purpose that we have in life. It's not just one purpose. It's like a tapestry of different archetypal images that the soul says, if I go in this direction, I will bring happiness, meaning, and fulfillment to my life. And we don't have to necessarily achieve anything. We just have to go in the direction of those images that are compelling to the soul. The ninth house sun in Gemini wants to learn. It wants to travel. It wants to study. It wants to consider multiple perspectives. It wants to sharpen crafts and skills like Hermes. So it's very airy too. It's very playful and curious. And when we see that connected with Jupiter in the first house in Libra, we know that you're going to have a kind of grand sensibility, likability, charm, and optimism. We got Jupiter in a Venus ruled sign in your first house, very socially poised, intelligent, broad-minded, these kinds of Jupiter in Libra themes in the first house connected with the sun in the ninth. So we have in the ninth, first, and fifth houses, what Indian astrologers call the Dharma houses. Dharma essentially is like your life purpose. Like one of the dharmas of a cow is to give milk. Like it gives milk to its young, or in Indian culture, obviously the milk is thought of as life-giving to society, right? It's the gifts of that the cow gives are like thought to be its dharma. So each of us also have things that we are here as a function of our soul and our being and our karma to give to the world. And we discover and develop those things through the Dharma houses. We learn and cultivate skills and understanding in the 9th house that contribute to the development of our Dharma. In the 5th house, we discover those joyful, positive, creative elements of our Dharma. In the 1st house, we discover how our character and our personality contributes to our Dharma. So what we're looking at with these 3 houses being activated is Uranus, the god of revolution, hitting the emblem of purpose in the house of the higher mind. So we have some kind of learning or transition of what you practice or how you think or what you believe, or, you know, what kinds of teachers or subjects are fascinating to you. And we have this kind of renaissance or rebirth or awakening taking place with respect to life purpose. Uranus and the sun, just a fantastic transit. Uranus connecting to Jupiter in the 1st also activates the sense that I am growing and revolutionizing, not just in what I know or believe or am thinking about, but in terms of who I am. There's this flowing sense of personal growth that comes in through these transits. Now, Pluto in the 5th is also saying there's a new kind of creative thing that I want to do or contribute or know or share. Right? So when you look at all of those together, that's when I think we start getting the window for some really significant developments in your career, or how you're doing it, or where you're doing it, or what it looks like, or how it feels to you, and the sense that you're really becoming someone new and different in relation to what you're doing. That's really, it starts building in 25, summer to fall, but then 26 is really the year of the Renaissance. That's when I see it like really kind of taking off for you.
That's so cool. And so it's so affirming, because I started my business off of a layoff. So it was more of like, I think I might want to do this. I don't know. I'm okay to fail at it. And so it's really the first time in my life where I felt like, okay, I think I'm onto something.
Yeah.
You know?
When did when did that happen, by the way?
Oh, the craziest thing. So I don't know about your philosophy on zodiacal releasing, but the most insane thing, I looked it up. I ended up getting laid off. Is it the part of fortune that is our career?
You're releasing from spirit for career.
Okay, modest spirit. It was like 2 days from a peak point in the lot of spirit that I got laid off from my job.
Yeah.
Which freaked me out. So
what year? Like what year was it, or what month and year?
March. Let me look, because I had to write this on all of my unemployment stuff so many times.
Right.
March 5th of this year, and then I started my new business. I entered in my EIN request on the Taurus new moon that was in like June or July.
Okay, fantastic. So it was, you said it was early March that you got laid off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just, I just want to look at that really quick. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I think is really, hold on. Let me put your chart up just for a second, and then we're going to go on to the next person here. But yeah, so one thing that's really fascinating is that release would have been happening as Jupiter and Uranus were coming together in your 8th house.
Yeah.
And well, what's really fascinating about that, the way that I would spin that transit to give you a little encouragement here would be to say that, remember, the 8th house is often the place of our karmic debts, obligations, and contracts with other people. When you have Jupiter Uranus in the 8th, one of the things that many Librans experience under this Jupiter Uranus transit was the liberation and the kind of freedom from a karmic bond or obligation. When you are moving into working for yourself as opposed to working for other people, and you're laid off under the application of Jupiter Uranus in the 8th, that's not such a bad thing.
I think it ended up working out beautifully, but it was definitely pretty ouchy. So
in the moment, I'm sure it was. I feel like, let's just say you go on to have some success doing your own thing. you may look back at that moment and say that was the beginning of a freedom, which is a weird way of looking at it. But in hindsight, you never know. It may end up feeling like that.
Yeah, it already does. It's ended up being a great thing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Thanks for coming on. And I really appreciate you opening yourself up. And hopefully everyone got to learn from your example too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye. Okay, that was really nice. Really fun, interesting reading there. Jesse, hi, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good. Let me okay, give me your date of birth first.
Yeah, November 9th, 1989, 12:02 p.m. And that's in St. Louis Park, Minnesota.
Right. Okay, I have you as Cap Rising. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okie dokie. Let me put your chart up on the screen. Anything in particular you want to talk about?
Well, I guess the biggest thing on my mind is some ambiguity in career. I've been working in a corporate environment since 2017, and it's done amazing things for me. But I just had a baby, and my husband is making some pretty big moves in his career too. His career has kind of had us moving around a bit. And so there's some opportunity for him, and I'm just wondering if it would make more sense for me to stay home. Especially, with an infant, and a career that it doesn't really, it kind of feels like I've hit a ceiling. Just, it might have run its course.
Let me ask a few practical questions, just because I think it's always important to just understand the practical context, right?
Sure.
So the question is there pressure or need for you to earn right now, or are things comfortable and secure and there's like no pressure from spouse, or you know what I mean? Like, how's the situation there?
Right. It would help for me to be earning, certainly,
Okay.
but it would help for me to be staying home. It's
Both
kind of this catch-22.
Yeah, right. Because of course there's a need for resources to help with childcare, or I mean, it just, I get that. That feels familiar,
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it that you do for a living, or would you be doing, or?
Yeah, I work for a large financial firm as an analyst.
Okay. Is there any kind of desire to work part-time rather than full-time, or is it sort of a binary, like full-time or full-time mom, or?
Well, if I wasn't working full-time, I just don't think it would make a ton of sense to like hire childcare, to your point, there's a lot to consider there, namely cost, pay a kid rent.
Yeah. Let's just sorry, I'm going to pull up your buy wheel here. Give me just a second. Okay, here we go. These are some, okay, so just given the situation and not having like all the time in the world to kind of dig in a lot deeper, which I would normally want to do. But let's just kind of look at context here. This question is coming up about my purpose to work or to be a mom, as Neptune is over your moon, right? That registers, right? Right. That's
sure.
like, that is like right out of a textbook. Neptune is over my moon. I am a new mom with is this your first?
No, my second.
Okay, so your second. How old is your other child?
He's 10.
Okay, so you have a 10-year-old and an infant, and you're in this kind of nebulous state of wondering if you should be absorbed in parenting or going back to work. Here's what I would say. First of all, I highly doubt that this resolves itself until Neptune's completely done with your moon. I would wonder just because I know how Neptune and the moon works, if you were to go back to work under Neptune transiting your moon in short time. For example, let's take this forward. Neptune goes back over your moon exactly, like in February, in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you go back to work in the next couple of months under the banner of Neptune conjoining your moon. I'm not sure that experience would lend itself, and it would lend you any clarity.
Right.
Like I feel like you could easily be at work under that transit and going like, I feel like I should be doing mom stuff. I just wonder, because Neptune on Moon, often when women are in the early stages of parenting after a child's being born, is kind of like this oceanic state where there's
Mhm.
a close psychic proximity between you and your child. There's a sense of losing yourself that, obviously, like postpartum depression can be very Neptune Moon, or restlessness and a feeling of uh, hopelessness or boredom, or wondering if you're doing anything of any substance, or if you're just drowning in a sea of milk, or whatever. That's very Neptune Moon. So typically when I see Neptune move off the moon in such situations, that's when clarity will start to present itself. You know what? I don't want to go back to work, and I'm feeling very clear about that. Or you know
Mhm.
what? I'm feeling like I'm emerging from the ocean of milk, and now I want to, I want to go back to work. I'm very clear about it. So Neptune and Saturn are both working over your moon in the next year, and Neptune will kind of completely finish with your moon in February of 2026, at which point both Saturn and Neptune enter Aries to stay, and then they're sort of done with your moon. I would suspect that by 2020, like if you were to take the next year or so and devote it to being a mom, do I know for sure it's the right decision? No, I have no idea, right? But I could see Neptune finishing its process with your moon as a nice one under which to allow yourself to be uncertain about anything other than the immediacy of an infant, and just kind of letting that happen. And then by 2026, just a little over a year from now, I would guess that your self, like just being really clear, what do I want? What do I want to do? Do I want to return to work? I would think that it would be there. And my advice for women in this situation over the course of my career, especially after my wife had kids and went through similar decisions and stuff, is to not place any expectations on yourself, and to allow yourself to wait until clarity and direction and purpose emerge naturally, rather than putting like an artificial timeline around it. Of course, that's why I ask if there's constraints financially, because that may dictate the situation, right? But if there aren't, and there's a little bit of space, even a year within which you have to live a little bit tighter, might be better to do that than to push yourself to make a decision when you don't feel ready. And the psychic space of Neptune and the moon is not, it's a nebulous space. You know what I mean? So maybe
Yeah.
better to give yourself the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Especially Neptune's a long transit over my moon, and just ambiguity is the name of the game the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ambiguity of living space, ambiguity of purpose. It's waiting for it to pass makes a lot of sense.
When did you give birth?
This past July,
Okay.
July 24th.
Okay. So you've been through a Mars in Cancer in the 7th house during this period. The retrograde will come in the early part of the year. Remember that this retrogradation could provide a little stress around the marriage, the relationship, your spouse, whatever he's going through at work. But don't get too worried about it, or too reactionary, or too quick to try and change everything to make stress or tension go away in the marriage, or with respect to what your spouse is going through. Because although Mars from the early part of the year all the way through April is kind of doing its work in a difficult condition, dignity wise, in that 7th house, right on its heels comes the exalted Jupiter entering a Jupiter return year in the 7th, which I suspect will mean that if you said that your spouse is kind of in position to potentially make some upward movement in their career, or get a promotion, or earn more, more income or something, I suspect that from Jupiter's return in June onward, you would see more of that potential or promise being fulfilled. So that's also just a way to kind of steady yourself if the Marsy part of the year, Mars in Cancer retrograde from like January, then it's direct motion all the way through April, it's like a little dicier and could place some pressure on you. Like, now I have to do something. I have to do something, especially because Mars in Cancer can make you feel a little bit more insecure in that, that nesting phase that you're in right now. It's like, oh, my husband's dealing with stress at work. That makes me feel a little unstable. I have to go do something. It could put some pressure on you. But remember that Jupiter's exalted return in the 7th house is very promising with respect to the direction that things are going in marriage, family, your husband's career, and it could be beneficial for you as well. So, kind of keep that in mind, and like just remember that for everybody, we have the salve, the healing, the balm of Jupiter in Cancer following the Mars. Yeah. The other thing is that, just we were talking earlier about Saturn and Neptune. Those two planets are coming together in your 4th house. And they're starting to place a pressure on those that stellium of planets in your 1st in Capricorn. One of the things that they may point, I mean, look, as far as I know, a lot of Capricorn risings that I've worked with over the years, right? And the pressure that we place on I have a Capricorn moon, so I can speak with, kind of like a card carrying member of the Capricorn Society. We place a tremendous pressure on ourselves to be responsible, to show up and to do the hard stuff and to be mature and the other thing I imagine during a year in which Jupiter is opposing those planets and Saturn and Neptune are starting to square those planets is that you may be grappling with what I think is hardest for Capricorns to grapple with, which is the temporary feeling of being ineffective or unproductive or lacking some sense of forward movement. There could be a feeling of futility or frustration that you're experiencing in a sense with staying at home for a little bit. But the reason that could be a positive thing, at least for a while, is that I think for many Capricorn risings, the work is to gradually learn how to white knuckle life a little less, just how do I take care of the things I'm here to take care of with maturity and responsibility, but not holding so tight that there's guilt, shame, and fear driving me and not allowing me to relax or take spaces of interlude when they come, when they're meaningful.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I hope that this was useful, gives you some good things to think about and ponder. I love that. I mean, the idea that you will not find continued purpose and direction with that big stellium in your 11th house is, and a Capricorn stellium in the 1st is probably out of the question. So I don't think, it's only a matter of time until you're probably back at the game of life. So, enjoy this space and don't put too much pressure on yourself is what I tell you for now.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Quick plug for your program. I'm in year 2 and I love it. And I'm really looking forward to signing up for year 3 when we get the opportunity.
Yeah, I recognize you right when you came on the camera and I didn't want to give you away, but yeah, it's great to have you in class.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. Take it easy.
You too.
All right. All right. I'm going to have one more person come on before I have to go. Kerveen, is that how I say your name?
Yes, that's correct. Hi, Adam. How are you?
How's it? Good, man. How's it going?
Very good, very good. I love your channel. Been watching for a few years now, and I love your day in and day out dedication, and just the way you go about things. So much respect.
Thanks, man. That's appreciated. Hey, what's your date of birth?
May 7th, 1988.
We got a Taurus on board. I love it.
Nice.
All right. What's your time of birth?
4:12 a.m.
And place of birth?
Beverly, Massachusetts.
All right. Let me just double check that I got this right. Aries rising. Does that sound right?
That's correct.
All right. Cool. I'm going to put it up on it. Anything you want to talk about today?
I guess, yeah. I was looking for something a little bit general, but kind of what's on my mind. For the past several years, I'm an artist. I do music, and I'm pretty well known around my area. Have gone international as well. And for the past couple of years, I kind of faded out a little bit to focus on different things. And I do have different ideas as far as what I like to do in the world. That's a little more than entertainment. I have ideas for charity and things. I started a health food business as well. And as I've kind of fallen back to focus on the infrastructure of the business aspect of these things and kind of how I want to move forward as I'm growing, I think about the connections that I currently have, and some people in my life that, you know, may be looking at it in a specific way. And it sometimes does rise insecurities in me. It's partially why I kind of fell back as well too, so I could, you know, do some self work and some shadow work to move beyond that. And as I'm gearing back to kind of come back out, so to speak, I'm just looking for a little bit more clarity as far as like how to navigate things like that. Not only to do with friendships, but also love as well. And just having that confidence to keep moving forward.
Very cool. What kind of music do you make?
I make hip hop and soul music. I also do some soundtrack work for anime.
Nice. That's really cool, man. I love that. Yeah, cool. You'll have to, if you don't mind, shoot me another email and tell me where I can like go scope out your music later. That'd be cool.
Awesome. Will do. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. Dude, ever since I become a dad, I am so out of touch with like the cool new people making stuff. I just like, I'm surrounded by like Bluey. I'm like, I've got like, yeah, go ahead, man.
No, you have all the time in the world, man. Definitely.
Thanks. All right, here we go. Whoops. Let me get this out of the way. Let me put up your let me put up the buy wheel here. Okay. So let's take a look at kind of like the arc of career. Okay, so are you like right now, are you in the process of creating anything or starting a new project or anything like that? Like right now?
Yes, I have been working on an album for the past couple years, and really have been like making it real the past year or so. So I am working on it right now.
Okay, cool. I wonder about that just because Mars is about to turn retrograde and it's going to do so. You see how it's moving right here over the lot of fortune in your 5th house?
Yes.
That's interesting. That looks like it could be like a very kind of destined moment of creative design and good fortune. Like one of the things that Indian astrologers looked at with the 5th house was the good karma from past lives that will manifest and bring us happiness or joy somehow in this life. Very particular meaning of the 5th house, but when you have a lot of fortune there, it kind of reinforces that idea of a kind of benefic karmic inheritance. The 5th was called the joy of Venus and the place of good fortune. And here's the lot of fortune. Here's Mars, which for an Aries rising is, I think, a very entrepreneurial kind of creative signature, right? Mars in Leo feels like I'm the executive of my creative company, of my path, of my, it's like a creative designer kind of energy. And here it is coming right over the lot of fortune, going to turn retrograde and go back over it. Makes me feel like there's some fruit that's about to ripen on the tree creatively for you, but also maybe going back to something like that. When you were talking about, I'm kind of going to go back to something that I was doing and maybe took a little moment away from, that this retrograde on lot of fortune could kind of reactivate something creative from the past that is feeling empowering again. And that something very positive and fortunate could come from it. That feels like a really nice way of looking at this upcoming retrograde, which will be very powerful here in the month of December, early January. So I would watch that. The other thing that comes to my mind, though, is I wonder if this creative project doesn't somehow dovetail as Mars retrogrades into Cancer in your 4th house with something like familial, ancestral, something from the past, because Mars retrograde in the 4th will often bring up like dynamic content from home, family, parenting, ancestry, origins, past lives. It's kind of a deep, mysterious house. In fact, the 4th house was associated with the occult in ancient astrology, all things that are hidden. A Mars retrograde in that house connected to almost what looks like a little bit of a creative renaissance that starts in the 5th. I wonder if it doesn't dovetail into some meaningful exploration of the past or of like family history or something like that. That would be something really interesting. I could also see it bringing up this creative project could be empowered by some catharsis that's about to happen with respect to home, family, parents, siblings, family members, something like that, because that Mars retrograde initially connected to this kind of creative moment is also going to be opposing your moon, which is the ruler of the 4th house and another emblem of home and family, right? So sometimes I feel like creative projects come through when there are And as we're creating something, that transmission of something within us will coincide with the family constellation, like shifting in interesting ways. So that's just a kind of creative idea that I'm riffing on here that comes to my mind looking at it. Does that make any sense to you right away? Or
It makes a lot of sense, actually, in two ways. One way, creatively, I am kind of infusing my family history into the project that I'm making, especially from like my grandparents and different values and things that they said that I learned that they said that's similar to kind of how I think today. And just from a creative aspect, that's one thing I'm doing. And kind of the spirit that made me go in that direction is, me breaking my own patterns that I become aware of, as far as generations before me, and wanting to do things in a more meaningful, wholesome way than just creating just solely for entertainment's sake. So that resonates a lot.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah.
The next thing that I would point to here, and I apologize, I wish that I could spend an hour with you, but since I'm on a little bit of a time crunch, I got to kind of roll along a little bit.
That's perfectly fine.
We got this transit coming up, Uranus on Mercury. As someone who articulates through word, speech, music, I mean, you've got a Mercury-Venus conjunction. Those two planets in that sign are the same as Bob Dylan's, for example, kind of a poet, wordsmith, singer-songwriter. So very common for people who have Mercury-Venus co-present in the same house to be very articulate, to be pleasing in the way they sing or speak or write or think. So first of all, you have that gift. You're a Taurus with the sun, Jupiter, and Venus's sign. Venus rules the throat chakra, got the connection to Mercury and Venus, and double-bodied Gemini. Feels very much like a lyrical artist. So what I love about this for you is that, check this out. We have this transit of, first of all, Uranus on Mercury will be like this explosion of original thinking and speech. And for you as an artist, I see this as a really powerful moment of saying things, speaking things, coming out of the throat chakra with something really original, and even for you in your own arc, like groundbreaking somehow. And then, so I love that as a really nice creative moment. Of course, it's getting empowered by Pluto trining from the 11th house. What's interesting about that is that right afterward, like almost immediately afterward, the nodes of the moon shift into Leo and Aquarius. And then you're going to start getting eclipses in that 11th house. So we see those eclipses starting to roll in at the end of 2026 into 2027. At that point in time, then you're in the midst of this ongoing process where, like, North Node's going to be going over your Mars in the 11th. You're going to have some forceful and original and like brave and bold things to be sharing that are probably going to be a part of some greater group, a scene, a community. And then you see the Pluto and the Uranus hitting the Mercury at the same time. That's a fantastic explosion of original thinking or music or lyrics or creativity that I would see coming through your house or your chart, and then also sort of bringing you into some new collective spaces that maybe you haven't reached before. That's what the North Node in the 11th tends to do for people who contribute things creatively and then put them out into the world, is they'll bring your creative work into a different kind of container or space. So I love this. And then from there, things just build, man. If you look forward from this moment on, I think 2026 is a big year for you. And then move it along a little bit, and we get the nodes of the moon back into Cap and Cancer. And then you've got North Node stuff rolling in your 10th house. And you have very industrious, hardworking Saturn in your second. This is where I think you're going to go from things that are conceptual and creative and taking you out into different places in the world to then really solidifying and building structures. And you might see, for example, that the ability to turn things that you've done into solid, sustainable, creative, and financial results will come during this transit with a lot more focus on structure and work and practical things. But it's a nice set of transits, North Node in 11th to 10th, kind of following the sequence of events here, where there's this original explosion of ideas, thought, words, stuff like that, taking you into different communities, and then this focus on building practical, sustaining structures that are probably more financially lucrative and things like that.
That sounds amazing. That sounds awesome.
Right on, man. How do we do? Do okay for you?
It did. It definitely did.
Cool, man. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the kind things you said about the channel too. I love knowing that there's creative people like yourself out there taking this in, you know?
Indeed. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And keep it up.
All right, man. Take it easy.
You too. Thank you. Peace.
Yeah, bye. All right. Well, I think this has been a good session for the day. Kelly says, powerful stuff. I'd love to hear your music, Kervin. Yeah, put it into the chat if you will. Tell us where we can find your stuff before we sign off. Yeah, you know, I love this comment. I'm blown away by this community of seekers. Shine on, you crazy diamonds. That's right. That's right. We got a great community here. Hey, we're at right now. Let's check and see how many backers we're at. We are at 105 backers. We've gone like 7 or 8 more backers who have come in during this live stream. Let me switch. Hello. Now I'm back this way. Yeah, thank you for joining. If you, again, one more time, if you have not yet contributed to the Kickstarter campaign, I come on and I do this because I love you guys. And I'm also trying to rally the support for this channel, for our staff, for all of the things that we do to try to give back and make astrology super accessible for people. It works because we believe in generosity. If we are generous, then we know that their generosity will be what we received as well. We believe that there's a circularity to the spirit of generosity that's always led our business model. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, but if there's any way of making a business spiritual and giving something in the way we do business back to people, then, you know, I've always believed that we should try to do it. So this is the way we try to do it. And, if you pitch in and support us, you can get a whole bunch of different things, tuition to our programs, all sorts of good gifts I went through earlier. At the end of all the videos during regular content, you'll see that I tag on a little video explaining all the rewards you can get. So check those out. Thank you guys for a fun session. I will be scheduling a live for next week as well. So stay tuned. If you follow me on Instagram at Nightlight Astrology, you'll see that I'll post an announcement also through my newsletter of when the next live stream will be. I choose people randomly. You know, so there'll be a chance we could call on you and do a reading next time. And I hope that you were able to learn something about astrology and reading charts for people through those examples. Just seeing how an astrologer does things is hugely helpful. That's why all of our programs have a major portion of the program devoted to doing live readings and employing the techniques that we study so that you can see how they're actually applied in like living context. That's the best way to learn astrology. So I hope you all found that valuable today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you again soon. Bye, everyone.